Wonderful. Good morning, everybody. It is Wednesday, February 11th. It's also Recovery Day at the State House. So we are going to be hearing from several individuals this morning on recovery housing. So I believe we have Candace Gale up first, who has been in our committee before, correct? Last year, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Perfect. Well, please come on and take a seat and we can hit the ground running. Yeah, we probably should introduce ourselves because there are other people, thank you, who have not been in our committee before.
Hi, I'm Rep. Dodge, Leonora Dodge from Essex Town, City of Essex Country. Nice to see you, kid.
Joe Parsons, Newbury, Topsom, and Groton.
Hi, Tom Charlton, Athens, Chester, Grafton, and Winter.
Debbie Dalton from State of Johnsbury, Concord, and Derby. Gail Pezzo, Chittenden, Twining, Colchester. Mary Howard, Rutland, District 6.
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm Elizabeth Burrows. I represent Windsor One, which is Heartland, West Windsor, and Windsor.
Emily Krasnow, South Burlington.
Ashley Bartley, Fairfax in Georgia, and our chair will be joining us. Great. Hey. Good afternoon,
Chair, who's coming? And members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to be here. For your continued support of recovery housing and recovery services in Vermont. My name is Candace Gale, and I serve as the Director of Community Relations for Vermont Foundation of Recovery, often referred to as V4. V4 is a member organization of Recovery Partners of Vermont, and we work closely with providers, advocates, and people with lived experiences across the state to strengthen and expand Vermont's recovery ecosystem. I want to begin by thanking this committee and the legislature for your past support of certified recovery residences. That support has helped Vermont move from having very few certified recovery homes just a few years ago to a growing, accountable system that is saving lives, stabilizing individuals, and strengthening communities. I'll start with a brief snapshot of the current recovery housing landscape in Vermont. Vermont Foundation of Recovery operates 10 certified recovery homes across the state, providing a total of 79 recovery beds. These homes serve men, women, and parents with children and are located in multiple regions to ensure access where it is most needed. Statewide, Vermont has approximately 150 recovery residence beds. While that represents meaningful progress, it remains far below the actual need. Certified recovery residences consistently operate at a near full capacity and wait lists are common. The Division of Substance Use within the Department of Health has identified recovery housing as a critical component of Vermont's continuum of care and has set a statewide goal of reaching 400 recovery residence beds by 2030. That goal reflects what providers and people with lived experiences see every day. Recovery outcomes depend not only on treatment, but on safe, structured housing during early recovery. V4 is positioned to help meet that need. We are actively pursuing expansion opportunities in Middlebury and Brattleboro as our next priority communities. Based on identified gaps and strong local partnerships, our ability to scale responsibly, however, depends on policy alignment and sustainable funding. That brings me to S-157. S-157 is a landlord-tenant exemption bill that recognizes the unique nature of certified recovery residences and allows them to follow credentialed discharge policies that protect both individual dignity and community safety. Recovery residences are not treatment facilities. They are peer-based, structured living environments that relied on shared standards, accountability, and community safety to function effectively. The current application of landlord-tenant law creates real barriers for certified recovery residences. It limits an operator's ability to respond appropriately to relapse, unsafe behavior, or violations of house standards that can undermine the safety and stability of the entire recovery community. S-157 provides a narrowly tailored standards-based solution that aligns with national best practices and allows certified recovery residences to operate as intended. If Vermont is serious about reaching 400 recovery housing beds by 2030, policy alignment through S-157 is essential. Without it, expansion will remain slow and uncertain in many communities. In addition to policy alignment, sustainable funding is equally critical. I am here to clearly and directly ask the legislator to support the Opiate Settlement Advisory Council's FY27 recommendations related to recovery housing. Specifically, we are asking you to support 1.75 million in operational funding for certified recovery residences and support $200,000 in scholarship funding to help individuals access recovery housing. These funding streams serve distinct but complementary purposes. Operational funding ensures certified recovery residences can maintain safe staffing levels, meet certification standards, and cover rising costs related to utilities, insurance, maintenance, and compliance. Scholarship funding addresses one of the most common barriers to entry. Many people leaving treatment or incarceration do not have the financial means to pay upfront housing costs. Scholarships help bridge the gap and ensure recovery housing is accessible based on need, not income. Together, these investments support a system that is accountable, accessible, and scalable. In closing, I respectfully ask this committee and legislator to support S-157 to ensure policy alignment that allows certified recovery residences to expand responsibly, and OSAC's FY27 recommendations of 1.7 million for recovery residence operations and 200,000 for recovery housing scholarships. Thank you for your time, your leadership, and your continued commitment to recovery in Vermont. I'm happy to answer any questions.
I have a few questions, if that's all right. I promise I won't grill you. I just some clarifying questions. The 79 beds that you were talking about, that is at B4?
Yes.
Okay. And how many of those existed before we as a committee cleared up the landlord problem from, I think, 2 years ago? 2 years ago.
Yeah, so we added 10 beds since then.
Okay. And do you know how many of the 150 statewide have been added in the last 2 years?
I would have to defer to Jeff Moreau, who's the executive director of VTAR.
We have 3 new operations that we've certified since then. And that is roughly 20 beds.
Okay.
Sorry, can you just state your name for the record, please?
Thank you. I'm Jeff Moreau. I'm the executive director of the Vermont Alliance for Recovery Residences.
Thank you, Jeff.
Okay, was it? So I don't really understand the scholarship question. Not that I'm against it, I just need to understand it better. So when somebody leaves the corrections system, if they have gone through the treatment that has been provided by the state inside of that system, they don't have, I mean, we don't have any transitional housing for people leaving our system anyway, but they don't have immediate access to the recovery beds that we have.
So, yeah, so essentially, the scholarship is used for someone to be, if someone's coming out of incarceration and they obviously don't have money yet. The scholarships allow for them to pay for the first month's rent or the first month's membership fees for a certified recovery residence, as well as pay for us the $400 deposit that we have when you enter a home. So it gives them a month to really start securing a job without having to worry about income right away.
Is there, do you feel that there's a gap there that ought to be addressed, not just through scholarships?
When you say a gap,
Oh, I'm thinking about in terms of housing, the number of people who are incarcerated in this state who remain incarcerated because there's no place for them to go to, and the cost to the state of that versus just using what 1 month of that cost to pay for everybody's transition into, because it's, you know, tens of thousands of dollars a
Sure.
month. If that could be alleviated by, paying to, have anybody who needs it to just have our corrections system set them up in the recovery housing that they need in order to be successful. And so that's the perspective that I'm coming from.
Sure.
Do you think that the scholarships are enough is I guess what I'm asking.
Right, no, I see what you're saying, and I can't speak to the overall system of care entirely. I don't think that that is enough. But what happens, at least from, I can speak from V4's perspective, is that if we have someone coming out of DOC and say they need a higher level of care, we will have them go to, say, a Valley Vista or Serenity House, which is treatment first, to make sure that they're stabilized. And then we'll have them come over to a recovery residence, like V4 afterwards. And then they can use that scholarship that comes from VTAR, the Vermont Alliance for Recovery Residences, to basically like buffer them and pay for that amount of time while they're looking for jobs and getting themselves stable. But yeah, I feel like we could absolutely use more services.
Thank you.
Yep.
If I can, I'll go first. I have a couple of questions and comments. I might have asked you this last time I'm here and I don't remember. Are the residents receiving wraparound services? Is that part of the entry? That if there's an assessment or a diagnosis, that they have to seek treatment outside of the resident?
So we recommend that they have treatment, a higher level of care treatment, before they come into a recovery residences. And we've actually put a lot in place to encourage that as much as possible. So if we have someone coming in, especially from homelessness, because we have 62% people who apply to V4 that are coming in from like housing insecurity. And so if they're not stable enough, coming into our home, we automatically work with our treatment providers to get them that higher level of care before they come into a recovery residence. A lot of times we will work with that member who is wanting to come into our home to try to hold a bed for them while they're going into treatment, so that they don't have to worry about not having a bed when they come out.
That was my next question, is if someone does relapse, whether or not they go into treatment or they don't go into treatment, what do you do with that bed?
Well, we hold it for that individual if we can.
Is there a time frame that you hold it?
So yeah, we have to hold it for 48 days, but we do work with the member to see if we can hold it for longer. Right now, that cost is incurred by the member if we do hold the bed, because like there's no other way to do it, but we are actively
How do
looking
they
at.
pay for it?
They would pay for it once they came back to the recovery residence, but
Okay.
but it would still be a cost that is accrued for them. And
I'm so sorry. If we can wrap these questions up
Yeah.
really quickly, just because we do have individuals who have
Yes.
lived experience and we don't have as
We
much
can
time and we
talk
can
about this.
absolutely
okay, yeah,
have Candace back, but would love to have our other witnesses.
yeah, absolutely. Okay,
So we're gonna have our other witnesses and then.
yeah, I can always come back. I'm
Yeah.
here quite a bit.
We'd be happy to have you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you. I'm so sorry.
No, you're fine.
So we have Nicholas. I promise we're really nice.
We are.
A little.
Amazing.
It's not that I don't think you're nice. I know you're nice. I was just, I was still in the last conversation. Yeah, just trying to get my thoughts going here.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me again. It's a pleasure to be here. I love this day. Recovery Day is awesome. My name is Nicholas Ferriers. I'm a graduate of Ben's House. And I still work with Training and Recovery in Newport. I work full-time for SD Ireland. I've been back now for the last year. I graduated Ben's House two months ago. I was there 12 months. And And for me, this was where the journey really began. It was time to take the lessons that I've learned and put into action. To say that every day is a win, I would be lying. But what I can say is that from situations and trials I went through while living at Ben's house, I was able to reflect and see how I processed and handled everything changed and how I could use these lessons in my life, my work environment, my family, which are the most important things to me. I was able to rebuild my family and be the leader and the role model in every teacher and even be a teacher, which to me was the holy grail of gifts. The last year has been a complete blessing, especially coming from I was completely broken prior to Ben's house and everything. I had everything and then I lost it all. And after going through Valley Vista and into Ben's house and getting into Ben's house is where I was able to rebuild everything coming from my health insurance. It was that wraparound thing you were talking about. I got everything I needed was offered to me at Ben's house, and I established everything I needed to, and I gained it all, and then I put everything into practice, and it was a blessing, you know. Because I was gone. I was really lost. When I moved to Ben's house, where the team of Journey to Recover pushed me and challenged me every day and these are the most important things that I think was so amazing at Ben's house I learned and got, and especially from Journey to Recovery was to see, to feel, to love, and to accept and not judge, and to understand and to see that everyone's on different levels. Not everyone's out to get me or hurt me. And that taught me how to love. And that is something I never knew how to do or even wanted to do, you know? So that was huge to me. And then when I finally gave myself that love and support I needed, that's when I was able to be the leader and the friend and the father that I always wanted to be. I lost my father when I was a child. I didn't have anybody. I didn't grow up in a loving family. We didn't love we loved each other, but it was very distant love. And now to learn the skills on how to not to love myself first, but being able to love somebody else and to accept and to understand and to process and to step back and to just be able to like process it all was a beautiful gift that I got from Ben's house, from the staff at Journey to Recovery, from them pushing me, from them making me sit, think, like process, you know, and not run, you know. And I loved every aspect of it. This place saved my life. It not only saved my life, it gave me a life back. It gave me being a father. It gave me being a brother. It gave me being a husband. It gave me being a member to society. Something I didn't want to be, or didn't even want to give a shot.
Right.
You know, I didn't want to. I thought everything was trying to get me. You know, my guard was up. I was cold. I didn't care about nobody, you know, and it wasn't good. I was on a bad path, and I'm just grateful that there was this place, Ben's house. That I was grateful that Lila never gave up on me. You know, that people actually want to help and want to see someone like me who I thought my life was over. I really did. I threw it all away, but she was there by my side 100%. Even on the bad days, we had some bad days, but we got through them. And that's what life is, right? It's situations. I go through situations, I go through a situation and it gets good. It gets better or it doesn't. But what I've learned there is I'm the one that can change this. And that's what I want now. I've been gone 2 months. I'm back in the work life. I'm back in life. And I practice this every day. Some days I fail. I'm human, I ain't perfect. But I take that step back and I try to be that positive influence that was taught to me, that was given freely to me. Now I got to give freely back, because I want somebody else to have the opportunity I got, you know, or to understand how to understand right? Understand and process and evaluate the situation. And to see that we can't get through it without numbing ourselves, or we can't get through it without putting our guard up and resorting to the things that we don't need to resort to. And that's all because of her at Ben's house. So thank you.
Thank you.
Kind of off script here, but
It's really amazing.
Yeah.
This is why I'm glad I'm on Human Services Committee, because I would just be bawling all day long.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing your story. This is one of my favorite days of the year, so that I can really hear the real stories. And I think since we're the housing committee, what you highlighted is so important, because recovery is also made possible by community, and these recovery houses give folks a community to go right into. And as someone in my generation, I have a lot of friends who have been through recovery, and it's a journey. And places like Ben's house that you're describing seem like a really good opportunity for folks, so that like you can be sober, but if you don't have the support system in like that type of setting, it can be really hard. So I really appreciate your story, and very moving. And the one thing I ask is, I hope you keep sharing your story, not just in rooms like this, but out there as much as you can, because every time that you share your story, like you said, it helps someone else. And I really appreciate you coming in.
thank you.
Hope you come back next year too.
I will.
Thank you.
Nicholas, I just wanted to thank you for I think you said Ben's place about 8 times. Ben's house, yeah. I heard Ben's place. I'm sorry. But I just happened to look on the map of, and so that says it was brought online in 2025.
Yeah, I got there, yeah, well, I was the third person, first graduate.
So I just,
Wow.
I thank you for highlighting that and for coming, because we often think of, recovery as this like impossible dream. But this goes to show that when we put together really good, right, evidence-based recovery technique, community, and dollars, that we're making an investment for the future. You're now working in construction, which we are desperate in our committee. Construction that walks into our committee, we're like, it's all on you. No pressure, but thank you so much, because you truly do embody, your testimony embodies all of the things that we need to hear. So, you're amazing. Thank you.
So are you.
Nope.
And we have, I believe, one more witness, and it is Justice. Hello, everyone. My name is Justice Donald. I'm a former resident of Genesis Promise in Johnson, Vermont. I have been in recovery for 17 months. I'm here today to tell you guys a little bit of my story. My addiction began back in 2019. I had a lung collapse and I was prescribed painkillers, which I quickly began addicted to. The pills then rapidly progressed into fentanyl and crack cocaine. When I used those 2 drugs, my life spiraled out of control very fast. I found myself going in and out of jail constantly, but the problem there was that jail is absolutely not for an addict, at least not for this addict. I felt, and still do, strongly feel as though that jail is just a pause button on addiction. The last time that I was in jail, the central supervisor, Ruthie, who had seen me come in and out of that jail for over 2.5 years, stepped in and told me that I was going to Genesis Promise, and that she already had an interview set up for me. At the time, I thought, yeah, this will just be another place that I try and fail at. But boy, was I wrong. Genesis Promise didn't save me like I thought it did. They gave me the tools, the support, and the accountability that I so desperately needed. During my time at Genesis, I completed 12 weeks of IOPs. I attended health and wellness, where I learned to take care of my body again. I engaged in a workforce development program where I was able to work at the secondhand store that they own. I relearned how to write my resume. I learned major coping skills. amongst many other impeccable skills I would need in my day-to-day life, both inside and outside of Jenna's Promise. Before coming to Jenna's, I had lost my son due to my addiction. Luckily, my mom was able to take my son for me. But Jenna's helped me to take parenting classes with my child, take parenting classes to regain my parental instincts and recreate the bond that I once had with my child. I truly cannot put into words all the incredible things that Jenna's has done for me. I'm originally from Barrie, but after on-ramping from Jenna's, I got an apartment just a quarter mile up the road from, up the street from them. And I've moved my mom and my son out here with me as well. I'm currently still working at Copley Hospital, where Jenna's had helped me get a job. I'm beyond thankful every day for Ruthie stepping in and having me go to Jenna's. I know there's other recovery communities in Vermont, but I truly believe that Jenna's was just one for me. And I know it will continue to be for many other women to come. Jenna's may have been the perfect fit for myself, but with only one residence, they are only able to help so many women at a time. Jail costs $100,000 per year to house an inmate. Jenna's Promise costs $33,000 per year to actually support an addict in the road to recovery. I ask for your guys' help to please support Jenna's Promise and to please support all other recovery residences, as they truly make a huge difference for people like me. Thank you.
Thank you.
You did it.
Yes.
Yes.
Congratulations.
Yes.
What is an IOP?
It's intensive outpatient programming. So it's, so there was like cognitive behavioral therapy, there was, can't think right now, but there was, yeah, just basically like groups where we learn coping skills, we learn, like what triggers us and what things that we need to work on internally to become a member of society that once seemed possible for us. 6 years ago, I didn't think that I would ever be sitting in the state house in front of all of you guys. But I'm thankful to be sitting here today. I'm thankful to just have my life today because even a year and a half ago, I was very, very close to not having my life. So to even be able to sit here in front of you guys and be able to tell a little bit of my story and be able to have my family, my second family, it's with me. It's a blessing, it really is. And the biggest part about it is that Jenna's Promise helped me to regain my family again. So my mom, who at one point thought that I was pretty much a lost cause, we live together and we bicker about like who lets the TV on. So and I have my son back full time. My son's out here with me. So all these things were made possible by being at recovery residence. And yeah, so that's a huge part of Vermont is the recovery residences and the need for recovery in Vermont.
Oh. I was just gonna say, and I believe I've heard that Jenna's Promise has been such an amazing program that they're looking to replicate it in different parts of the state now. I've heard on the radio and other places. So that's really, it just has such a good model where it has the workforce aspects, the residential parts, the aftercare treatment, helping folks, get back into jobs. And so I hope that we continue to use that model across different parts of the state.
I do too, yeah. It's definitely exactly the one that I needed and
Right.
many people that may not even be addicts yet, that they will eventually need one day, because it's as Candace had talked about, but as Candace had talked about with being a complete wraparound service.
Yeah.
Jenna's Promise was exactly that. With having their IOP on premises, their workforce was on premises, the health and wellness, the housing where you can advance in phases to have more freedom. And there's an apartment where you can, really start to reintegrate yourself back into the community because you're not living in a house with staff and, you're kind of more on your own. And that was a huge stepping stone in my recovery, was to be able to advance to those phases and to move forward. So
And I don't drink coffee, but I heard the coffee's delicious.
it is good. Yeah, it is good. I'll say that. That's pretty good.
when you mentioned about the IOP, I was trying to understand like structurally, so the IOP could happen at somebody's private residence, right? Like it just means that you check in somewhere,
So.
or does it, or, and so Jenna's promise is like beyond just the IOP kind of aspect of the step down from like being in
Yes,
a
so,
clinical.
so Jenna's promise, you can't just, log onto your computer and do IOP. They actually hold you accountable that you have to show up, be there, be on time, and be there, be, present. Whereas, just being on a computer screen, I could shut off my camera and be down in the next room making a cup of coffee. So, they have you show up, be there, you have to be on time, you have to be accountable for yourself. So, it's on their premises, but not at the house. So you have to walk like maybe a quarter mile up the road to do it, and that's where it's done. So yeah.
Great, thanks.
I just want to say thank you for your testimony. You truly are a success story. And it is such a tribute to Jenna that her parents started this program. It is amazing. So keep up the good work. Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
My son exists because of recovery. And I congratulate you. I think Jenna's has a lot to do with it, but a lot to do with it has to do with you finding your inner strength. And my son now, 10 years out and 3 kids, so a life when I thought I would lose, I was sure I would lose it.
My mom was in that same boat. She was just waiting for the phone call that I was going to hear. And I was waiting for them to have to make that phone call. I had come to terms with the fact that I was going to die by my addiction. And I was, as Sam did say, I was completely okay with it. It was one way out, but I couldn't see another way out. Until somebody else had stepped in and really saved me from myself. Somebody pushing me to go. I believe, looking back now, I believe that they saw it in me that I didn't see then, that I could do it. So, and I'm not gonna pretend like every day at Jenna's Promise was sunshine and rainbows, but the one thing that was consistent was the support and the drive that they had always seen in me, and they knew that I was actually just telling my uncle on the way here that I was, there were some times that I was so angry at like them for like consequences I had, but I'm like looking back now, like it's because they saw that I was really going to make it and that they were there to push me every step of the way to ensure that I made it. So, and now I live a quarter mile up the street from them, so can't get rid of me.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for coming and making it a day here at the Safe House. I think with that, we'll turn it over to the chair.
Thanks for coming and taking time out of your day to do it. Our next witness, we're returning to H 772, an act relating to residential rental agreements, with 2 witnesses, Brenda Siegel, the Executive Director of End Homelessness Vermont, and then following is Chad Simmons, who's just a little late, but should be joining us around 10. And then after his testimony, we'll take a break and then get into the 2027 budget testimony we have, all of which everybody remembers we have a letter from our committee to appropriations next Friday. And so we're having testimony that will allow us to examine the letter and look at priorities. and decide what we want to pay. So Brenda,
Just need to grab it.
I'm into this. Let's see. But it's not testimony.
Yeah, I was looking for this side of it. I can't see my.
Oh,
Brenda, take your time.
Thank you. I'm very sorry. It's,
Takes time
learning
to
how to
transition.
do things with.
You are
when you're
not the
learning your
first.
eyesight
you are
is not easy.
Not the first person here to need a little help.
I'm not ready for that yet, but I can really tell you. I am gonna get some help from your committee assistant for my slides, because I don't think I can run them with my vision. So. Okay. I'm ready.
Tell us your name for the record.
Yeah.
Have you been before us?
I don't think I have this by any.
Yeah, well, why don't you give us your name and then we'll give you ours.
Okay, I do know most of you, but that would be great. Good morning, for the record, I'm Brenda Siegel from End Homelessness Vermont.
Okay. So Debbie, you want to start us off?
Oh, sure.
Introduction?
I'm Debbie Dolphin. I represent St. Johnsbury, Concord, and Kirby.
Hi, I'm Charlton, Athens, Chester, Grafton, New London. Joe Parsons, University of Thompson, Brock.
You know, Essex County and the city of Essex Junction. Sorry.
Actually, Bartley.
I'm Mark Mahaly. I represent Callis, Plainfield, and Marshfield.
Good morning, I'm Elizabeth Burrows and I represent Windsor 1, which is Heartland, West Windsor, and Windsor.
I'm Mary Howard and I represent Rutland City, District 6. We know each other.
Gail Pezzo, Chittenden, 20, Colchester.
Nice to meet you all. I want to start by saying that I'm urging, this probably will not come as a surprise to most who know me, but I'm urging the committee not to move this year. It has far too serious repercussions if done wrong. And if you do decide to move it, and I will offer some recommendations if you do decide to move it, but I do think that Representative Lamont's Bill H440 is a good starting place to then build from. I want to tell you a little bit about what we do at End Homelessness Vermont. Despite our name, we find people find us at the point of their emergency, and we continue to work with them and through their permanent housing. So we work primarily with people living with disabilities. So once somebody is housed, we continue to give them support services as they need them. It might be just a very light touch, or it might be coordinating services that they were not able to or ready for while they were experiencing homelessness. And so permanent housing and eviction are something that we deal with quite regularly. We also support people who are housing insecure, and so they are facing eviction. So while we're called End Homelessness Vermont, part of that is preventing homelessness in the first place. And I'm going to begin, though, by sharing with the committee something I rarely share about my personal story. It is broadly known that I lived in poverty for the majority of my adult life. However, I rarely share my own housing story. When my son was a baby, we lived in an apartment with a slumlord. It was the only option that I had. The apartment was illegally scraped to be repainted, and lead dust came in the windows, and my 18-month-old ended up with severe lead poisoning. We had no immediate recourse or remedy, and we had to leave the apartment with no notice, leaving most of our
belongings behind in order to protect my son. There was and still is no real remedy for that situation. Then it took me 4 months to find housing. My son and I were fortunate to live in a guest room at someone's house and an air bed, both my baby and I. When we finally got housed, it was with another less than adequate landlord, and we lived there for 4 years. Throughout that time, my landlord came and left without notice and without knocking. I was a young single woman alone with a baby, and regularly I would be stepping out of a shower and hear his voice calling me from downstairs. If I complained about this, he would threaten to essentially falsely accuse me of things to the housing authority so that I would lose my voucher, thus losing my ability to be housed. I needed to keep a roof over the head of my child and myself, and so I didn't complain about that. The house had black mold in it. There were rats in the kitchen. They were coming in through the hole behind my stove. At one point, the upstairs bathroom started pouring into the kitchen, and that happened for months before it was repaired. Eventually, I did withhold rent. My landlord evicted me, or tried. He also went to the housing authority and made up lies about me. Essentially, an attestation. I was lucky. I was raised with privilege. I lived in an upper middle class family growing up. I had a college education, and I knew that I had tenant rights. I got a hold of legal services. That took a very long time. They helped me to write a response. That took a very long time. And eventually I agreed to leave, but on the condition that I did not have to return the withheld rent, and the landlord had to give me $500 additionally. That was a success story for my clients. It rarely does not go like that. It rarely goes like that. The next house that I lived in was flooded by Tropical Storm Irene. 3 years later, we loved that house. We lost all of our belongings. The house was not beyond repair, but the landlord did not want to do what it would take to actually remediate the mold, so I had to move. This time it took us 18 months to find permanent housing. And the house I moved into is the house I live in now and have lived in for 12 years. The problem was never me. It was never my son. It was always the landlords who did not want to do the repairs and who understood that I did not have the power in that situation. The thing is, my story is not unique. This is what we come across every single day in our work. And I'm not saying that the landlords who are impacted are not impacted, but the solution is not the bills that I'm seeing before me today. But I will get into that in a minute because I do have some alternative remedies. I want to go over a little bit of our data. And so just to level set that, we have two departments at Homelessness Vermont. We have our Department of Housing Advocates, so we actually support people in their housing, as I just discussed. And we also have an Office of Research. And so we are conducting a multi-year study, and we're still in the phase of having the phase 2 of it reviewed, it's drafted, but I was able to and got permission to pull some of the data out to show you, even though the report is not out. This data was taken from September of 2023 to February of 2024 to all people in the GA program. The third phase begins this month and includes people who have been housed from homelessness, people who have been who are living outside, and people in shelters and GA. So it's going to be a broader version. I pulled out some of the data that I think is relevant to this bill, and it's okay. It's there. And I'm going to just move from this slide to the second slide. This is just, I always include this one because it's such a discussion point in our state, which is where people come from. So what we found was that people experiencing homelessness, we interviewed 200 people across 5 counties and 10 towns. And of those people, 103 of them have been lifelong Vermonters. So if you look at the data, there's 9 people that we interviewed that had been here less than a year. And of those 9 people, we know that 5 were not last housed in Vermont. And of those 5 people, when you see the full report, what we know is that one of them came here to live with their son, and that didn't work. One of them came here to flee domestic violence, and one of them came here for a job and then couldn't find housing. And then 2 of them didn't answer why they came. In the next slide,
Let me interrupt you. I have to confess, I can't really see the labels. You're saying there were about 200 people in the survey, right?
yeah, there were 200.
Yeah. And of those, 103 were what?
Had lived here their entire life. And 12 since childhood, 33, 10 years or more. 14, 5 over 5 years, 5 to 9 years.
Okay.
Yeah, so,
All right.
okay.
I just wanted,
And then if you look at the length in the GA program, there's 118 who had been in there under a year. This is again started in 2023. So something just to note is that there might be people that have been in there longer now at this point. There was more influx at that time. These are all people that volunteered. We had not met the majority of them before we did the interview with them. Homelessness history. This is really important because this is how people became homeless in the first place. So nearly 40% of the people that we interviewed had never been homeless before. And 39.1% had experienced their first experience of homelessness or housing insecurity or foster care as a child, because foster care is considered housing insecurity, that was as a child. So that's the first time that they've ever experienced housing insecurity or homelessness was then. And that 23.1% to 26.6%, because some said maybe as an answer, experienced literal homelessness as a child the first time. So you can see that there's an age, it's in your data right there that there's an age breakdown of people experiencing homelessness or their first age of homelessness. And even some of them that didn't experience as a child, their first time was as a young adult. So that does make sense in the same category. Going to the next slide, which is the cause of loss of housing. So it's important to note that not everyone answers every question. They don't have to. It's a voluntary thing. I mean, that's what we want because we get the most honest answers that way. But there were an 84 total evictions. Almost all of them were not caused by the tenant. Participants who reported losing housing to no cause evictions described the following experiences, and I'll go over the numbers in a minute. But among the 41 that were no cause, an overwhelming number were not allowed to have their child or parent live there on the lease. And several had reported health and safety issues and then ended up with a no cause eviction. And several landlords wanted to raise the rent or renovate or sell their house. There were 41 who said that there was a no cause eviction. There were 20 who had condemned housing. There were 19 people that we interviewed who were fleeing violence. An eviction non-specific was 16, so they said eviction but didn't tell us why. A family eviction, this means a family member had to ask them to leave for whatever reason, usually sometimes disagreement, but oftentimes they couldn't have them there, overcrowding or a situation like that. 11, retaliatory eviction, so that's when they complained about something. 5, foreclosure. 7, health and safety issues. They left because there was a health and safety issue, not necessarily a condemned house. There were 8, and flood or fire. There was 6.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So eviction non-specific, if a landlord raises the rent and just raises the rent and saying like, I'm fine with you remaining, like renewing your lease, but someone doesn't want to pay that, is that Does that fall under eviction non-specific?
I
Did I
know,
misunderstand?
no, but I am realizing that the non-payment of rent category is not on this chart. And so I have,
Should it?
yes, it should be. There is a,
Explain why.
yes. So non-payment, there's, when we had a number of people with non-payment of rent, so I'm gonna edit this and send you guys the updated one. But the non-payment of rent, category, almost all of them reported that they had either lost a job due to a severe medical condition, situation, event, or a disability, a sudden disability, or they had a death of a family member. So not all of them. And then another subset said that their landlord had suddenly raised their rent significantly and they couldn't afford it.
But is that considered an ejection or like an eviction?
Well, it depends on if they stayed after there was a non-payment of rent. So I have two categories. I don't know how they didn't end up in here, but there's one category that says non-payment of rent, and there's another category that says couldn't afford rent. And that's because non-payment of rent would be considered the eviction, and couldn't afford rent would be that they left because they couldn't afford it.
Yes, Elizabeth.
Is there any correlation between retaliatory eviction and non-payment of rent?
No,
Like if a person was withholding rent, does that
Yes.
fall into the non-payment of rent category?
yes, but I think the way we considered it in the study was that was a health or safety issue because they were withholding rent.
Okay.
So, and so
they're not
that,
getting
but
kind
still
of more
retaliatory.
than one time.
No, not getting, no, everything's,
And can I ask one more question?
Sure.
I'd love to go back just briefly to when you were talking about foster children in the,
Mhm.
I hadn't heard that before, and so I'd like to ask if you could talk about that a little bit more. So when you say age first entered homelessness, or homelessness or housing insecurity as a child, I guess would be the better one. Do you have a breakdown at all of people who were unhoused or housing insecure as a family unit versus those whose family had been broken up?
Yes, so the people that were housing insecure or homeless as a family unit is the 23.1 to 26.6%. And then it's not in this chart. I actually did not include the chart of social family services involvement in this one, but in that chart, which I can include when I this other one, it does show you the percentage. It's, I think, around 23%, but I have to actually see the number to know. And it falls almost directly in line with federal data of that shows that the experience of foster care is an indicator for homelessness.
Yeah, we already knew that. I just
yeah.
wondered whether you could break that out.
Yeah, yes. Yeah,
Thank you.
I have another chart for you. It's in human services right now. You could see it there.
Debbie?
Well, I mean, we have laws on the books on what landlords have to provide. And we have to provide a safe, healthy environment. So
Yeah, so
there are things a tenant can do if that's not being supplied.
unfortunately, when you're experiencing abject poverty, you don't have a lot of power, regardless of what the laws are. You are really, if that's your only option and the landlord is aware that's your only option, and you have, and the threat of eviction is hanging over your head, or the threat of not being able to stay or not getting your release renewed, those are things that not every landlord is a good actor, just like not every tenant is a good actor. And the landlord tenant laws are really there to protect against people who aren't good actors on both sides. So if that makes sense.
Well, I mean, it
Yeah.
just takes a call to the health inspector or,
Yeah, we did do that in our case, and
Yeah.
there wasn't proper enforcement. And so I didn't really have any repercussion, and
So we
that
have
is what we
bad
see.
health inspector.
But that is what we see with our clients over and over again. And so I think that it does matter who's at the other side.
Actually, if we could drill down just a little. on
Yeah,
that. So, because your example, when you laid out your housing history.
yeah,
So during the various processes you described, my understanding is you did complain to the health department.
Yeah.
And they came out and basically issued a ticket or something
They said you have to fix this within a week,
to the landlord,
the landlord,
and just simply nothing happened.
nothing.
And they didn't come back, right?
They issued another warning. They, the second landlord, I don't know if I went, he was very threatening, and so I don't know if I actually went to the health inspector that time. I was kind of scared of him.
Right.
And so it took a lot for me just to withhold rent in that situation. So I felt like there was not there, I felt like I couldn't even take the steps necessarily. And so the person sitting before you today is not the person I was in my 20s when I was going through that experience. But even now, I think I would find it very scary.
Yes, Debbie.
Well, I was gonna say even, it depends on when the lead issues happened, if it was before Vermont took it over, or when it was the federal government doing it. Again, you can report that.
Yeah.
And they will step in and they will handle the situation.
I did, and I think 10 years ago or so, because I've paid attention to this, the law changed slightly. And so lead might not be the situation, but there's other situations. Back, it was 20-ish, more than he's 23, so
Yeah,
around
that's federal.
20, I don't know, years ago. And it was still federal. But Vermont was supposed to do some things, but there wasn't any actual repercussion. And that part has changed to some extent. But it hasn't changed to the thing is that when you're on this side of it, when you're someone who's in abject poverty, you are experiencing something different no matter what the laws are before you. So that's something that's really, I think, is important. And you're completely relying on other people's timelines to get help that you need.
Well, to clarify, I guess, am I right? What you're saying is, number one, that when you do complain, there may be tickets issued, but nothing happens.
Sometimes, yeah.
And the second is you're saying that in many cases, people are afraid to because they'll be evicted as retaliation, and they
Right.
won't, and if they don't have a lawyer, nothing will happen.
Right, right. And so, and that's what we see every day. We see a lot of people, especially, we have a client who's now housed, thankfully. I'm very excited. But he had spent much time outside. He had MS. He has MS. He used to be a security guard here at the State House. He was a bus driver. There was a Boston Globe article about him recently that I'll make sure to link with so you guys can read it. But when he was actually unsheltered, he was exited from a hospital to the street. He can only move his arms just a little bit. And he could not even eat while he was outside because of this. And we finally found a hotel that would build a ramp that he could go into that would actually work for him. And then we were able to build a really strong team around him, but he had been evicted. How he became homeless was he became evicted because his wheelchair was running into, he became disabled while he was there. His wheelchair was running into the walls, and he asked for there to be modifications made, and the landlord said no. And then they evicted him for cause, and which we hear often with people with disabilities. And then that was essentially used against him when he went to apply at the housing authority and to get a voucher. And we were able to overturn that through an appeal, but that took a lot of people with him to do that work.
Yes, Ashley.
For cause, for damage.
Yeah. Yeah.
For damage to the
Yes.
apartment.
Yes. So it wasn't considered a no cause eviction. And that landlord in the eviction was supposed to not give negative references, and he did anyways. So we had to do a lot of work.
Yes.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's okay.
I work in HR. And legally, as an employer, if someone's an awful employee and I get a reference, I can't be like, yeah, that guy.
Yeah.
Awful.
Yeah.
Do you know, I mean, we haven't talked about it, so I'm assuming it probably would have come up, but does that?
No, and the problem with that to me is that there's a lot of personalities involved in a landlord and a tenant, and a lot of times, even if it's a no cause eviction, there is bad blood towards the end of the time, and so that not having that requirement. And even when they have that requirement,
Like, was it written like in an agreement? Like.
it was, in that case, it was written in an agreement. And when the housing authority called and went during the appeal, what I basically had to bring forward was, this is the agreement that was never supposed to be said. You can't use that to, but he had such a solid team of support around him that they were willing to work with him. I don't think we need to go over service connection, which is the next one. But just so you know, it is in there and it tells you, it shows you how very well connected actually people experiencing homelessness are to services. And then, but the slide after that, health of participants, I just want to make sure that you take a look at it, because the people experiencing homelessness are far more, have far more illness and disability than you are aware of, and even that is reported, because even in coordinated entry, the way it's reported, it's still self-report and it's connected to your housing. So research that is not connected to your housing is really critical for finding actual data out. If that makes sense.
Yes, you'll have a question, but I just to alert
Yeah.
you, we do have a bit of a time constraint, so I'd say you have like 8-9 minutes left, okay?
That's fine.
Do you have any data on the length of, or the duration of these statuses? For example, whether any of these, occurred prior to, loss of housing?
Oh, so in phase two, that's a good question. In phase two, we didn't ask that specifically. And so one of the questions that's prepared for phase three is actually that exact question. When did you become disabled? When did you develop this health condition? Because we aren't, unless they shared it as part of the story of sharing about it, we weren't able to tell if it was before or after their point of homelessness.
Thank you.
We have our suspicions, but that's not taken.
I was curious, when you follow these people through this process and you say that there's a lot of anger going on. And you end up with a judgment, right? At the very end, there's a judgment. How much damage is usually part of that judgment?
I think I don't understand the question.
Well, you'll have, is there any damage done to the apartment or is it just
Oh.
condition is when they rented it?
The majority of the time that, at least for this study purposes, we don't know the answer to that question, but when we're working with clients, the majority of the time our clients have not created damage unless they have a disability of some kind. But just keeping in mind that we work primarily with people living with disabilities, so that's who. And then the last slide I want to share with you before I just close, and I'll send you, I have detailed information about each bill, but it was too much for this time period. So I just.
That would be
sent it
great,
in
but
writing.
that would be great.
Yeah.
The written testimony is really good.
Yeah, so that, I will send that, but I just wanted to do the learning disability slide, just so you know, when I send this in, what that's referencing. So roughly, almost 10%, so 9.5% of the people that we interviewed, either couldn't read or write or had trouble reading or writing. And I think that's really critical when we're making eviction law, because things like they have to respond in 5 days or else that the eviction will go through is a really dangerous for somebody who can't read or write. And so those are things that I think are really important to be understood. And I will remember to include the foster care slide. And then I just want to close. I have a bunch of notes I was going to give you, but I've had such great questions. So those will just come in the written testimony about it. But I'll close by saying that any landlord or tenant bill on the horizon should be rooted in equity and should be data driven. The foundation of landlord tenant law has to consider both the landlord and the tenant. And H779 and some of its counterparts are really more of a landlord bill and essentially strip some rights away from tenants. I know you asked me to go through all the bills and I will do that in writing. A bill that is truly equitable does not create effortless evictions. It will not create more homelessness. Several of the bills before you would create more homelessness and also a much more difficult time for individuals to get housed, leaving people in poverty with no hope. There is good data on just cause eviction. We know that most evictions make it through the process in 60 days and that there is no magic that will make being a landlord or a tenant easy. But we certainly can ensure it scientifically, that it is scientifically driven and solutions that work. So our three main recommendations that can address root causes without eroding any landlord-tenant law for now is adding a restorative justice process to so that if something is not working or it's not working correctly, then that can be either a required process, which I think restorative justice centers would say they don't like, or it can be a option for mediation that has to be taken by the landlord. Or it can ensure that already existing law for eviction for dangerous behavior is funded so that it works properly, because there's already a 15-day eviction. And I think the problem there is that that piece is not working properly. So rather than make it shorter, make it work properly. And then three, I know we don't, studies where there's providers just sitting in a room, that those have generally not resulted in us doing something. However, commissioning an independent study that significantly researches both the experience of tenants and landlords and the data behind it, so that it does not lean in any one direction and offers some solutions, might be a way to move forward in another biennium on this.
Yes. Well, actually, wait.
Sorry.
You're next, then you.
So this is just a comment, and I'm not sure that it applies in 2026, but when you said people can't read or write, that doesn't necessarily mean that they're not US citizens. I worked on a suicide and literacy hotline, and there was just as many citizens than there was non-citizens that don't read or write.
Yeah, I will actually tell you that every single person that's answered that they could not read or write was a lifelong Vermonter. That was something we found surprising. So in the full report, you'll see more of that kind of information.
Are you aware that we did have the landlord tenant study committee?
Yes,
So
but
how is this different?
this is an independent study.
But how is that different?
Because
We had people from, there was only myself and Joe, and everyone else was a stakeholder from both.
Right.
And it pretty much would be the same stakeholders.
No, because an independent study is a researcher. So it's not someone doing the,
Data.
they're gathering data and making recommendations based on the data, as opposed to any of the interested parties. They would interview the interested parties, but they wouldn't. So when we do our research, it is people they volunteer. We don't necessarily know them. We will interview them if we do.
And you're
But-
suggesting like who would pay for that?
Like,
We would appropriate
appropriate,
an
yeah.
independent study on data.
usually an independent study is somewhere between $100,000 and $200,000 for something like this. I do happen to know that. You don't have to go that way, but before making such drastic changes to landlord tenant law, it seems like knowing that the data supports it and that the recommendations of true research.
No, absolutely, and I will add that one of the components that I had hoped would be in the landlord tenant bill was a data aspect.
Yeah.
So I do agree that there needs to be better data.
Yeah.
Actually, it would help, since a number of us are in fact interested. I'm not saying that I agree with the idea that we do nothing until we have more data, but I think that in our position, we hear a lot of stories.
Yeah.
And we have to make decisions on the basis of stories.
Right.
And we all kind of wish we
Mhm.
could make decisions a little more on the basis of data.
Right.
But we've been a little puzzled as to how we would collect the data.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't mind it if you have the interest, if in the material you submit to us, you think a little bit about what the methodology would be. In
Sure.
other words, you don't have to argue to us that data is a good idea.
Okay.
Where you could make a contribution, given that you have been doing it, is a little bit your thinking on, well, what would the methodology be that might tease out good data?
Yeah,
And you don't have to tell us now, but submit it.
yes, I can do that. And I can tell you that I got much advice when I started from public health researchers. And I think that their methodology is pretty sound. So that.
Okay, great. Thank you. Debbie?
Well, when you say that, we're hearing the stories, like, are we gonna have any of the people that I want to testify?
Well, we'll talk about that after, when we don't have a witness here. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Brenda.
Thank you.
Our next witness is Chad Simmons.
Sorry, Chad. I could do a little less devices for my eyesight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. I don't think we need to introduce ourselves to you, Chad, and tell us who you are for the record and take it away.
Chad,
Also, you are in a new role.
newish, although it does feel like it's been quite some time already. Chad Simmons, the Executive Director of the Housing and Homelessness Alliance of Vermont. It's good to be back in your committee. It feels like it's been an entire session. Glad to be back here. You all are cooking this year. So my hope today is just to provide some general observations and reflections of H 772 and of the other bills that you all have before you. And then provide a couple of recommendations and proposals to move forward. Before I start, I will just share, as I shared with the committee prior, that I coordinate a large alliance of organizations and individuals that come from a variety of perspectives. So that includes people who provide housing, organizations and individuals who provide housing. It also it includes advocates who are advocating really focused on individual rights and rights. So I hope you can appreciate kind of that beauty and that tension of the variety of folks that we represent. So the few things I wanted to cover today is just some of the guiding principles. You've seen this before, but I just want to highlight a couple that are specific to these bills and our approach to making recommendations. Provide a little data. It actually will dovetail quite well into what Brenda just shared. So I appreciate her testimony and her focus on people's lived experiences. I'll share some general reflections and then recommendations. The first is this kind of our mission is to build a Vermont where the fundamental right to housing is enjoyed by all. And I think that's an important thing to name up front, that we, in terms of what our perspective is on the impact of these bills. You all have seen this before, but I'm going to highlight one in particular, is that the role of government, in this instance, the role of state government to ensuring that promise that everyone has housing. And I think it's really important as we talk about the impacts of changing landlord-tenant law and who has power and authority, and the impacts on both the housing community as well as tenants. You all have seen a lot of this data before. My former colleagues at VHFA have presented a lot of this to this committee, but I wanted to highlight some things that this committee might not spend a ton of time on in terms of the people experiencing homelessness. So these data come from the point in time count. The last one was actually just done 2 weeks ago, and is done annually every year in January. It tries to assess the number of people literally homeless on one given night. And so we would just flag that we have, and our partners have found that this oftentimes is an underrepresentation of how many people are actually homeless, and I'll get to that in a second. As you can see in the slide, homelessness has skyrocketed in the last decade. There's lots and lots of reasons for that. I think Maura Collins has articulated that quite well, that there's many reasons why we find ourselves in this housing crisis. So we can't just pinpoint one solution to address why folks are unhoused. There needs to be many tools in the toolbox. So we tend to point to the coordinated entry data. This is an assessment as part of a broader community-led process that assesses the needs of folks in the moment going through a statewide coordinated entry system. Oh, you don't need to see all that. That is the state of my life right now. And so as of December, we identified at least 4,000 people are self-identified as literally homeless. So I think that is an important piece to note here.
I've got a quick question about that. And so the coordinated entry system, how can an individual access a coordinated entry system? Is that the 211 thing, or is it like if there's a great big flood and somebody goes through United Way, are they automatically entered into coordinated entry? Like how is that? What are the entry points for?
Yeah, the ideal is that it can be accessed through a variety of ways in your community. So there are local housing coalitions, and those partners, so they include the designated agencies, the community action organizations, the shelter providers. And all of those folks agree that if folks come in saying, I need assistance with shelter, or I am literally homeless, how can I get help? Then they provide that assessment.
Do they have to have documentation when they sign up for coordinated entry?
I don't know the answer to that.
What do you
Others
mean by
around the room
documentation?
might, but
Driver's license, social security, like documentation of their. No, okay.
thank you.
Yes.
Is there any way of knowing or any estimate that you have of those that don't identify as homeless and enter the coordinated entry?
The assessment is so folks volunteer the information and fill out the assessment with a staff person. And so you're asking if
Those who they're just living on the street and they're not connecting with any.
well, living on the street would most likely fall into the category of unsheltered by the HUD definition of literally homeless. And so those definitions, based on the reporting, the self-reporting that folks give, those then would fall under the definitions as part of the assessment. So essentially folks answer questions. It's a fairly lengthy assessment. And then, sorry for that. I thought I knew. A great take so far. And so the folks provide their in their own words what their status is. And that also applies to their current level of disability and housing type need that they're seeking.
Yeah, I don't think they made my question clear. There's going to be a class of people who don't want to connect with any agencies. Do we have any idea, for whatever their reason is, do we have any idea if there's a certain?
I don't have the answer to that question, so I would defer to others who might have.
So I mean, if you're talking about the point of the what is it called? The
Point in time.
point in time count. Everybody who works in the business knows that it's a tremendously rough estimate.
Okay.
It's the best, yeah.
It's what we have.
In
Best
that
we
moment,
got.
and the coordinated entry provides a more robust and community-driven response on an ongoing basis.
Thank you.
Yeah. Well, This slide just shows, and I think this is important, this will get important to the recommendations part of the testimony, is the number of people who self-identify with disability conditions, including mental health and alcohol use disorder and substance use disorder. And so I think it's really important when we're looking at tailoring recommendations, policy recommendations, that those recommendations align with kind of the acute needs of the people experiencing crises.
Is this, but this is out of a total of what? Does it relate to the home, to the point in time count? Does
This is the coordinated entry.
coordinated entry? Okay.
So this gets to and I've shared this with other committees this year and kind of just trying things out on the fly, but this is something that in my work over the last decade or so, focusing on substance use disorder and figuring out how to meet people's needs where they're at, as well as working in the housing world, is that people are complex and our systems should be simple. And that is not what we're experiencing right now. And I think people, and Brenda pointed this out too, that some of these systems that people are entering into are extremely complex and overwhelming. And that places a great amount of burden on individuals who are experiencing crises or experiencing homelessness. And it's also really difficult for the people trying to provide those services or trying to provide housing for folks. It's often daunting for, and I know you've heard testimony from a number of our members, including nonprofit housing communities, who have shared the difficulty in accessing certain supports and services in a timely fashion that provides community safety. So I won't show this video now. I've showed it in other communities, but I think this articulates very well a system that would be human-centered and appropriate for us to kind of mimic in a way. So I encourage folks, it's a 90-second video. I encourage folks to take a look at it. It's by the performer Johan Bouzouis. And it's a really compelling articulation of what our systems could look like and feel like. Some reflections on H772 and the other bills that the committee is considering. I think first and foremost, and I've shared this with the chair prior to to testifying today, is that I think any proposal should not create more homelessness and housing insecurity. As I said, our members come from a variety of different perspectives. And as we're working in other committees and on other bills, and as you all have seen in your communities, the impact of homelessness and especially unsheltered homelessness is really challenging and profound. And we're strongly advocating for any proposal not to increase that burden on our communities and on individuals. Tenant rights need to be protected. I think we've heard from a number of folks that it's really important to understand the power dynamic of folks who are providing the housing and folks that are in need of housing or are currently in housing. And our members are asking for some relief. I think including some of our nonprofit housing folks, as well as a number of folks in the for-profit housing community have shared that there is an existential crisis happening right now, and that folks are looking for guidance and help from state government to figure out how can we both house people and meet people's needs where they're at, but also provide some stability and safety within that housing unit or that housing complex or community. So HHAB's belief is both those things need to be true. So people and mission-driven organizations providing housing should have tools at their disposal to move people in and out of housing that is most appropriate for the broader tenant community. And this, and importantly, this should be done in conjunction with the tenant and the community partners to ensure safe and smooth transition into other housing or shelter arrangements that are most appropriate. And I'll get to that in the recommendations and investment part of the testimony is really aligning what we need as a state to ensure that people are not unhoused or unsheltered, but also have options and supports and services at their disposal. Eviction in and of itself is will not really address the root causes or decrease costs. And I think this is something that we've been communicating in the House Human Services Committee and hearing really compelling testimony from emergency departments and healthcare providers that moving people out of housing because of whatever circumstance is happening is just shifting the cost onto local municipalities, nonprofits, and individual housing providers, as well as the broader community. So we're not saving money and we're not helping people out by evicting people out into the street. HHEB does support provisions in H440 that provide a clear just cause eviction process that includes allowing termination of non-payment in the specified time. I think it's important to look at HHEB is broadly in support of just cause provisions. And I think H440 does a good job of landing that plane. I'll kind of end my general comments here with something that I've been thinking about for the last several years, and I know Maura Collins has talked a little bit about this. And the links here are not necessarily causational, but I think it's really important for the legislature to understand that delicate dance is that housing, rental housing is part of a larger housing market. And that if we pull one thread, it impacts the other parts of the market. And so if we create too many restrictions on folks providing housing and don't provide the tools for folks to be able to be nimble, we're going to potentially unintendedly limit and constrict the housing market to provide housing for people. And what do I mean by that? Well, the housing needs assessment talks a lot about Vermont's very low vacancy rates, which means landlords and property owners and people who provide housing have the ability to charge more, charge less, limit the availability in some instances. I know in my conversations with housers over the last summer, there was very real concern and fear about what they're experiencing in their housing units. And some of them shared that they're considering taking their rental units offline. That runs counter to a number of the things that you all have done over the last number of years and the investments made to increase the number of units coming online. And so I would just think about the implications of if we limit the options for folks providing housing, the impact on our housing market. I'll also note that VHFA has put out over the last number of years really compelling data about the impact of short-term rentals and vacation rentals and how that is a definite pull financially for people who have housing units at their disposal. Meaning if it looks financially more lucrative to move from a year-round rental to a short-term rental, and if providing housing is fraught and challenging, there is an incentive to move from a long-term rental to a short-term rental. And the data bears that out, that there is a cost benefit that folks are making. We are seeing an increase in short-term rental. It's still a very small percentage of our rental stock, but we're seeing an increase. And so I would just caution any inaction or dramatic reaction that may limit the ability for folks providing housing to act in the best interest of the broader community. Just want to stop and see if anyone has any questions on that part.
Tell us what more you want to do, just because I'm looking at the clock and I want to get a sense of.
Yeah. So over the last week, I've had a number of conversations with our members, both who provide housing and advocates. And we don't, I cannot come here and say I have a position on 772. What I can say and what I've been telling our partners is there needs to be some sort of agreement. There needs to be some sort of tool that folks who provide housing can use within existing law that allows them some flexibility. And as I talked about earlier, working with that tenant and community providers in good faith to find a better housing fit. And working with our current service providers to do that process. So I've asked our members to work on a solution. And I don't think, and as I shared earlier, I don't think inaction is an option. I think there needs to be some solution that our community partners and the legislature can come to. I would also say, and I'll get to the judicial part of that in just a minute. I would say, and I think H772 does a good job of articulating the number of investments that would be needed to strengthen our current system. So invest in those systems specific to programs that address the root causes of issues creating the challenges. For example, adding specialized housing and shelter capacity for substance use disorder, mental health, respite. So our community partners like Pathways and has done some really good. Some of our shelter providers have provided some really phenomenal respite housing and shelter for people to get well if they are in crisis and to provide safety for both themselves and the larger community. Greatly invest and modernize Vermont's mental health and physical health and substance use system. I know that's a big one and not necessarily the purview of this committee, and it's vital to addressing some of the root causes that you all are trying to face. And then increased investment in Vermont's coordinated entry system. This is the work that Human Services Committee is currently working on, and I look forward to seeing how that plays out. The last thing I'll say in terms of specific recommendations, and I have one more slide after this, is to work with the judiciary to identify efficiencies under current law that addresses both the tenant protections and due process, as well as the timely processing as evidence indicates. And what that means is allowing folks in housing situations to, if there are situations that include violence, and or sexual or domestic violence, things that are clearly need to be expedited under using existing law and due process, encouraging the judiciary to find efficiencies in the existing system. Finally, the investments needed. A number of things have already been listed in H772 that we agree with, including the Vermont State Housing Authority rental arrears program. This is a really critical tool that can help alleviate some of the pressure that a number of folks in the housing community are facing. The rental payment credit reporting through the Vermont Treasurer's Office, we're in strong support of that tool as well. Investing in the Champlain Valley Office of Economic Opportunity, Fair Housing Trainings and Advocacy. These are statewide programs that can be accessed for both landlords and tenants and are highly effective. Human Rights Commission, I know the legislature invested over the last year, increasing their capacity. We would advocate for an increased capacity for them to continue doing their work, especially in this fraught time where fair housing is under attack at the federal level. Legal representation available to all. This has been a recommendation from a number of our members that legal representation can actually speed up the process and allow for individuals to get the representation they need and then work directly with landlords and property owners. As Brenda Siegel just mentioned, and I'm so glad she did, and reminded me that connecting with our restorative justice community is vital to this suite of solutions. So resourcing our restorative justice systems and capacity to be available in a timely way, I think is really important. And finally, increase the capacity of specialized options for people experiencing mental health and substance use crises. And that, again, is being worked on through the Human Services Committee bill. Want to take a breath? Stop there.
Questions? Yes, Debbie.
I just have a question. I mean, all of this is taxpayer funded. And Vermonters across Vermont are saying, you know, we need lower taxes. So how do we lower the taxes and have all these taxpayer funded programs?
Sure. It's a good question. I would say, these investments are vital to ensuring people, both individuals and people providing housing are able to do so in a humane way. And I would also say, again, some of the testimony that I've been a part of in hearing from other communities, again, is that shift in cost isn't necessarily going away. It's just being shifted to other parts of our economy. So we're paying for it in our healthcare premiums, in our healthcare industry, because people experiencing mental health crises and substance use disorder have nowhere else to go, and our systems are overwhelmed. So we are paying for it in other ways and in other parts of our tax system. And so HHAB would argue that investing proactively and preventively, investing in these types of programs would actually bring down the actual cost of them.
And for landlords?
Yes, yes, and everyone, yeah, including landlords, yes.
Other questions for this witness? I do have a course request. On that slide, I noticed that the first three bullets are in 772. Fourth bullet is the HRC issue of their budget, which is a problem. I am interested in this restorative justice matter. And I would really appreciate a lot more concrete ideas of exactly what it would look like, who would do it, and which entity would provide it and what the rules would be. I mean, I heard you say probably it would be kind of tenant, maybe, and it could be landlord or tenant initiated, but if the tenant initiates, it's mandatory, whatever. But whatever the proposal is, I don't know, whether it would make it into this bill at this time, but I think I know a lot about restorative justice. I consider it. I will say, I really don't, I appreciate your testimony. I don't think that, I think you have to advocate the way you're advocating. To be really dark about it, I think the world we are operating in is, do we increase homelessness by making the process more efficient? Or do we increase homelessness by discouraging landlords from staying in the, that's in a world in which there is no money at all. That is the choice we are facing. I realize I am not asking that as a question of you. That is not something I expect you as an advocate to respond to. I'm just being honest. I think we are in a very dark world that way. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
I really appreciate both of you having come in. We're going to take a break right now, and we will return in 10 minutes at 12:05. We will have a
11:05.
11:05. Thank you. 11:05. We don't need an hour to do what we need. 11:05, and I noticed HCB is at least partly here. Anyway, we will then we're going to have testimony on budgetary matters is what we're going to do. We're offline.